Let's bring in counselor to the president now, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, thank you for joining me today. This is big news because the nation potentially will see a State of the Union unless Speaker of the House Pelosi steps in and disinvites the president. What's your take at this point from the White House?
The president intends to go to the chamber on Tuesday night to address our great nation and give them an update on the state of our union. It would be, I think, remarkably petty of the speaker to disinvite the president of the United States to address the nation that they both serve at the highest level. And I just want to correct politely one thing John Roberts said. The president is not being vicious towards Speaker Pelosi. I was there in the Oval when he was writing this letter, when he was sending it out, as were others, and he was not being vicious at all. He said, I want people to be able to make their plans. I intend to do this on Tuesday. There's been some opaqueness from the speaker. There's been some uncertainty surrounding whether or not the State of the Union would take place on Tuesday as scheduled or in Congress in the Capitol as is tradition. And so the president wanted to put that to rest so people can plan. The First Lady is inviting guests to the State of the Union, as is the custom for every First Lady. And if Speaker Pelosi wants to disinvite those people as well, or not give us enough seats to be able to invite all these guests who represent the best of America and the best of America's spirit, then she's going to have some explaining to do. Look, I think fundamentally she's someone who doesn't always have control of her temper about the president, but she often doesn't have control of her own chamber. I think she's afraid that many people are not going to show up, and that's embarrassing to her. She basically needs to say to her caucus, I want you to attend the State of the Union. I want you to be able to go back to your constituents at home and say, when I had a chance to listen to the president talk about what happened in the last year, what the vision is for the year ahead, you were seated there, you were polite in the chamber. You don't need to clap, you don't need to stand, you don't need to agree, you don't need to give an affirmative vote, but you should show up. Right. This is a party, the Democratic Party, is so focused on 2020 that they're not focused, as my boss is, the President of the United States, on 2019.
All right. I do want to step in with something that does have the nation's focus, and that is a growing backlash against a government shutdown now. 71% of people in some polling showing that the border wall fight is not worth shutting down the government. That is a backdrop now to what is going on with the State of the Union. So I'm curious to know, what exactly does the president want to say the State of the Union is if the government is still shut down next week?
Well, the president has said again and again, including in his proposal that he released publicly on Saturday, Harris, that he is coming across to the Democrats in some of their wish lists. They have asked for more immigration judges, more personnel at the border. They want technology, including drones. They certainly want more detention beds and money for humanitarian needs at the border. And I think we can all agree, since every single Democrat in the House and Senate who voted for the historic drug legislation last year, they've already said drugs are a problem through that vote. They've already put the funding and the awareness and the teeth behind combating our drug crisis in this country. So when it comes to doing so at the southern border, the way they're doing in their own communities, why the big fat no? It makes no sense. So the president has come to the Democratic wish list and said, here are the things that I can agree with.
And he'll make that part of a State of the Union next week, that wish list? Okay, I want to move on because we got to get to this. America now watching to see how many more days beyond where we are into a second month now with a partial government shutdown. 800,000 people hurting. The president signing legislation that they'll get back pay. But many of those contractors in the constellation around those government workers will not get that pay. That is traditionally how it works, and they are going without. So this is a broadened swath of people who are damaged as the government is shut down. If the president is given something that both houses of Congress agree on, will he sign it?
It depends what it says. He obviously has said that he wants people to be paid. And that they will be paid.
We got that. But will he sign something that doesn't have border wall funding as we get late in the game now? But a date.
But that's not realistic. I'm sorry.
But a date certain to
that's
talk
just not
about
realistic.
It. That's something
it's not border wall funding.
Table.
It's border security. Look, if you don't have a physical barrier that people cannot crawl under, climb over, drive through, or walk around, then we don't really have border security. That's just false. What happened to all these Democrats who have made joyful noises and affirmative votes in favor of secure fences and barriers and indeed walls that already exist in the past. They're being disingenuous. They voted for the funding to put it there. They voted for the funding to renovate it more recently. They're just being petty and partisan, and we want them to come over. We need a bipartisan solution to what should be a nonpartisan problem. We have great compassion for the workers. We have great compassion for the contractors. And as the president said, it could take 45 minutes, 15 minutes, or shorter if the Democrats would just come to the table, allow for the entire border security package, which includes so many things they pretended they wanted over the years, and get moving and reopen the government. They need to do this. And the worst thing that could happen is to not have the State of the Union in Congress with everyone there on Tuesday, so that the country can see everybody together working towards these solutions.
All right. I wrote it down, joyful noises, and that's what we can sometimes call when people have voted for something in the past. I've asked Democrats, would you tear down the 600 plus miles that you have now? And they would say no. So we know from the majority leader in the House, Steny Hoyer, and others, barriers, walls in some areas do work. Kellyanne Conway, thank you very much. The president insisting on having a State of the Union address. We'll continue to cover the breaking news. Thank you.
From Customs and Border Protection lay out what the agency is calling a, quote, urgent humanitarian and security crisis that is ongoing at our southern border. Take a look at some of these numbers. In the past 4 months, about the course of the year, a little before that, 9,000 illegals have been apprehended at the border. Most of them are coming in with families with children, which is a new trend that we're seeing, or an accelerated one to be sure. As a result of that, many who are coming through are in need of medical attention in much higher numbers than what we have seen in the past. The agency also reporting that it spent 20,000 man hours, when they break it down, on taking these individuals to get medical care, to hospitals, etc. All right, also in this report, in one 2-day period alone, take a look at what they apprehended. Almost 1,000 pounds of drugs that were coming across the border from smugglers and traffickers. Remember that this is the issue that is at the heart of this whole shutdown. A shutdown that the Senate voted on twice today, but failed to bring to an end. And now, a new suggestion tonight from the president.
One of the ideas suggested is they open it, they pay a sort of a prorated down payment for the wall, which I think people will agree that you need. You need the wall. In fact, I see a lot of the Democrats almost all of them are breaking, saying, look, walls are good, walls are good.
Except for Nancy Pelosi, who is saying absolutely not. But could there be some movement between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, who are still meeting tonight? Kellyanne Conway, counselor to President Trump. Kellyanne, thank you for being here. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you, Martha.
So what is the very latest? What did you hear out of that meeting? And what is the president exactly talking about? How prorated would it be? Over what period of time?
Well, we are encouraged that the leaders, Mr. Schumer and Mr. McConnell, are still meeting into the night here, because that says that perhaps we can get that border security and also get the government reopened. Those are the dual goals here. This president is keeping a promise to the American people, his first and solemn duty to secure the southern border. He sees a humanitarian crisis on both sides of the border. Here we've got the drugs pouring through, the child smuggling, a lot of crime, but also, most importantly, we have at the other side of the border people taking this perilous journey. And of course, Mexico has, I think, started to implement some of the policies that allows people, particularly these unaccompanied minors and families who are coming up from the Northern Triangle countries, to stay in Mexico while their asylum claims are being processed on this side of the border.
He tagged bracelets on people and telling them, from what we're hearing, to head right to the United States. But I want to get your thoughts on the vote that we saw today. We saw two votes, and the vote that had no border wall funding actually got more Republican votes than the one that had border wall funding. That one pulled in Lamar Alexander, Isaacson, Murkowski, Collins, Gardner, and Romney. So it appears that on the Senate side, they want to get this over with, and that they're willing to compromise on border wall funding to do so.
Well, but both votes, of course, neither achieved the 60 vote threshold that is necessary. And I was really struck by how many Republicans stuck together with the president's point of view and priorities here as well. But the president was, I was in there today in the Oval Office, so the president was speaking to a number of different Republican members and feels very buoyant that his negotiating team on Capitol Hill was up there today and trying to come up with the next phases of a deal. Remember, Martha, we're yet to get a counteroffer. or even much of a response from the Democratic leadership to the proposal that the president put forth publicly on Saturday. It's now Thursday.
Yeah, no, that is very surprising. No, it doesn't.
They have to make a counteroffer. I mean, Nancy Pelosi saying no money for a wall. That's just not realistic.
Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, I'm sorry to interrupt. If they're meeting, do you have any indication that Chuck Schumer, is in there with some kind of response, with a proposal from the Democratic side? And when the president talks about the possibility of a prorated wall payment, is that down to a very short period of time? Like if you have a continuing resolution over a number of weeks, is it, sort of broken down to, well, here's some wall money for a number of weeks even?
Well, on that regard, he is considering a number of different options and speaking with his legislative and legal teams tonight, actually, on that. But what I want to tell you about the funding and the two bills is this. The priorities remain the same. It is border security, but it's more than that. It's more than the barrier, which, of course, is a centerpiece. Really, the Democrats' wish list is in the president's proposal. DACA, TPS, humanitarian needs, detention beds, more immigration judges, 2,750 new personnel at the border patrol, more technology, $805 million for technology and detection methods to seize these drugs, $800 million for more humanitarian needs.
There's no doubt. We detailed that very clearly.
They? Come to the table, stay in town.
There's plenty in there that they should be glad about, and there's all kinds of evidence, at least up to this point, that they just don't want the president to be able to sign anything. So we'll see if that's changing.
The win is not for the president. The win is for the country. This country, we're a sovereign nation that needs borders.
Well,
and
it appears though that politically they don't want the president to have a win here.
And Martha, I want to say something that hasn't got a lot of coverage. I work on the drug crisis here at the White House every single day for this president, for this nation. Every single Democrat last summer who voted in favor of every single Democrat who voted in favor of the drug legislation. They've already admitted that we have a huge opiate and drug problem in this country. And now when it comes to the 300 people dying from heroin overdoses a week in this country, 90% of it is coming over the southern border. Increasingly, fentanyl is, cocaine, certainly meth. Right. We've got to stop it.
Well, let me ask, I want to look at the polls with you, because it does appear that, according to the polls that we're seeing here at Fox and in other places, that the president is getting blamed for this. The approval number down 3 points from December to now. His disapproval number is up 2 points from December till now. And then the question, who is to blame for the shutdown? President Trump gets 51% in the Fox poll. Democrats only get 34%. Is that how does the president feel about that? Politically, does that feel difficult for him? And is that going to push him to maybe make a compromise he wouldn't have made prior to that?
The president is not looking at the polls. He's looking at the policies. He's looking at the crisis at the border. And he's not keeping a campaign promise so much as upholding his constitutional duty to keep us all safe. If he had to look at polls to make decisions, he'd be like a lot of other politicians. Well, he just said yesterday he was so happy with his numbers with Hispanics, so he clearly follows the polls. We know that. Right. There's no question. He's happy that people are getting the message, even though it's so difficult to get the message out on these issues. And also in the Fox polls, you've seen that the wall itself has gone up in appeal to many people. And it's not just the wall. It's a steel slat barrier. He has said, call it what you want, so long as we have it. It is a centerpiece of it. But Martha, this president doesn't want to be blamed for not taking action on the border when so many presidents have promised, both Republicans and Democrats. Congress has failed to do its job for any number of years. The Republican-led Congress last year had promised him after he signed that omnibus, and he said, don't ever give me anything like that again. I won't sign it. They said, okay, but we'll do the wall for you. Where is it? And now the Democrats are in charge. But I think this is much like criminal justice reform, the opioid crisis, all these bipartisan measures that passed. This is a nonpartisan issue at our border, striving for bipartisan solutions. And I think there are a number of Democrats, including the 31 Democrats who won in 2018 in districts that President Trump carried in 2016. 22 of them are freshmen. I've got to imagine they're going back home and getting an earful. We didn't send you there to be in a shutdown. We sent you there to secure our community.
Before I let you go, I mean, you just said they're going back home, and I think that's one thing that really infuriates a lot of people who are not getting paid right now.
They're rarely here. That's right. And by the way, the Congress,
for the weekend, and they'll be back when, on Tuesday?
That's right. They're fully funded. They have the longest weekend of any workers in their districts. Their members in Congress have and look, just stay in town. The president's saying, come to the table, stay in town, hash it out, get it done. And we're glad that leaders McConnell and Schumer are doing that right now tonight, and hopefully we'll come up with a resolution. The president is ready to sign it.
All right. We'll be here if there's news. Thank you very much, Kellyanne.
Thank you,
Good to see you tonight.
Bye-bye.